All right, so I'm out here in the garage and I've decided I want to hang a pegboard up right here. That was kind of the goal all along. So when I put these lights in, the goal was to hang a pegboard up and to eventually build a workbench. I've been using an old kitchen table, our old smaller table, for a workbench so far, but the goal is to eventually build a big workbench. But the first step is getting a pegboard so I can get some of my tools out of a tote labeled tools so I can see them and access them more easily. I've never hung a pegboard before, so after a few YouTube videos and stuff, this is how I've decided I'm going to do it. So this is how I'm doing it. It's probably not right, but this is how I'm going to do it. So if it doesn't fail, then you'll know this is how I did it and you can do it too. So to start off, I've hung some furring strip up here, so this will show you a little bit better what it looks like. So furring strip is just 1x2 material that I'm going to put because you need something to offset your pegboard off of the wall so that you have room for the little hooks to hook behind your pegboard. If you just put the board right on the wall, no way to get your hooks in. So I've seen people use 2x4s on videos. I don't really think a 2x4 is necessary. It's not going to have a ton of weight, and you're just going to cover up a lot of the holes for your pegboard if you use a 2x4. So we're going to use some 1x2 furring strips. So I'm going to get a piece. I've already got the piece up here on the top. I made sure it's nice and level. I'm going to get another piece down here on the bottom, and then we'll do a couple in between. And that'll just give us something that we can hook our pegboard to. So I just picked up a piece of 4x4 pegboard from my local hardware store here in Wisconsin. It's Menards because we don't have Home Depot or Lowe's in the city I'm in. So yeah, get some furring strips put up and we'll go from there. Okay, so I got the furring strips up. Basically what I did is I cut my two boards here the same length. My top board's level, which should make my bottom board level, so I didn't bother leveling my bottom board. But that'll give me a frame. You can see that these aren't going to be as wide as what my 4x4 sheet is, just like these aren't quite as wide, but that's okay because I don't need to have support out to the very last inch. I'll give me some support here and some support here, but this is into the studs. So it may have been overkill, but I'm 3-inch screws through the piece of furring strip. It's about 3/4 thick, and then I've got my 1/2-inch sheetrock. So I should have a good 1.75 inches into the stud, which should be plenty, I would think. So now I'm gonna put up the piece of pegboard. So there you go. There's the pegboard all up and mounted. I ended up using 16 of these 3/4-inch particle board screws with some number 10 washers that I had, just because I didn't want the screws to pull through the particle board, so this gives me a little bit bigger head. There's some other types of screws. I think they're like that have the built-in washer that I could have used, but I couldn't find the length that I wanted. Kind of dirty. And as I'm looking at this, I may at some point end up pulling it back off and putting a couple pieces here in the center just to give it a little bit more rigidity through the center. But we'll see how it actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I may pull, at some point I'm going to pull this back off, I think, and put a little more rigidity. So if you're doing this, just go ahead and put a third. I recommend having a third right through the middle, just because that'll give it a little bit more something to hold on to support it. I think it'd probably be fine how it is. You know, I've got 16 screws, which is by all intents and purposes probably overkill for what I need. And we'll see. I'm not going to put a ton of weight on this, so we'll try it with this. But like I said, I may end up pulling it back off to put something in the center. I don't know if you can see that it does have just a little bit of give, and I think if it was stabilized there, yeah, it would Anyways, something to try. So now I just gotta find where I put all my hooks from my old pegboard in my old house and see about getting some tools and stuff up on the wall. So I'm putting stuff up on the pegboard. I'm like, man, this is going really well. And then I remember I covered up my outlet. So I've got to either take everything off and take all the screws out and cut it out, or I can try cutting it in place. We're going to try cutting it in place because I already took all the bottom screws that I had put in and the side screws, because I ended up taking and putting another piece of furring strip in here. I didn't like how much gap there was with no support, and that made it much more rigid. So I was able to leave the top screws, slide a piece of furring strip up the middle in the center, and I have 2 long screws that are 3.5-inch screws that go through the pegboard, through the furring strip, and into the studs. So should be nice and rigid there through the center with good support. I should have just done that in the first place. I recommend it if you're going to do it. But now we're going to see if I can cut this. So I have outlined where it goes, and we're going to try using my jigsaw with it in place and see if I can just angle in. You can see I already started here. We're going to see if I can get this the rest of the way out so I don't have to take everything down off the wall. We're going to try something different. So I got one of the sides done, but where the base of my jigsaw is hitting, it's scuffing up the board a little bit. So I'm going to try using my little keyhole saw that I typically only use for drywall, but we're going to see if this works. Alright, so the keyhole saw didn't work. The blade was just too thick to get in. So I'm going to try using this little hacksaw blade just by hand and see if I have any better luck. Well, that worked. I at least have access to my plugs now. I'll probably have to get a box extension, extend that box out, and move the outlet out a little bit so it's flush. But for now, I at least have access to those plugs. Long story short, just don't do like what I did, and remember that your box is there before you get everything put up and everything on the wall. And you won't have the same problems that I did. Easy enough. All right, so that's it all finished up. So I got the 4x4 pegboard hung up on the wall. Got some of the tools that have just been kind of cluttering up my garage up. I still have the totes full of tools, but at least this gets some of the hand tools and smaller things that I'm using more frequently up where they're not cluttering up the shelves, and yeah, turned out okay. So again, this is just how I did it. I'm sure there's other ways to do it. I'm sure I probably did it wrong, but it works. Seems sturdy enough to hold my tools. So if you're looking to build a pegboard or get a pegboard, install one, hopefully this is helpful. So all you need is some furring strips, a stud finder if you don't know where your studs are. You'll need some screws to mount the furring strips. Altogether, cost-wise, I think I'm probably, I don't know, 20, 30 bucks tops. So it's not an expensive project. The 4x4 pegboard was about $10. The furring strips were like $3 a piece maybe, and then just screws. So it's really a pretty inexpensive project, and for me it's well worth the 20-30 bucks to get some of my stuff organized and get it put up where I want it, as opposed to just wherever I have room to set it. So the next step will be I gotta build out a workbench, so that'll be coming down the road. There's the kitchen table with the unfinished balance board. But yeah, turned out okay. Let me know in the comments what you think.